Hey guys, welcome back to the Personal Transformation Podcast. My name is Dan Storey, author of Personal Transformation Blueprint. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about mental toughness. And mental toughness is a concept that I've studied experientially from a very young age as a sports person, and really over the last few years in the corporate space and the application in work. And let's talk about mental toughness is, what it isn't, and then ultimately look at the 8 components that build mental toughness and that you can measure objectively and then develop over time. So what is mental toughness? Let's take the sports context, because I think that's the easiest one to really understand this. And imagine you're a high pressure athlete, and I'm going to use American football, which is my sport historically. And imagine you're the quarterback. The quarterback is the person who controls the game from the offensive position, and they're responsible for deciding some of the plays, making significant choices on where the ball goes during a play. They're the person that owns and controls everything. And if you're in the business space, that is where quarterbacking comes from. So you can be a quarterback in business, you're really a quarterback on the field in American football. So you can imagine the pressure that's going on in that role. Every single play, you're making decisions that are going to influence whether you win or lose a game. Some of them go well, pass is caught, or you change a play and the read is good on the defense. Some of them go badly. You throw a ball, it's in the wrong place, or it gets intercepted. Yeah, and as a quarterback, you know that the worst thing that you can do is throw an interception that gets returned for a score, call it pick six. And that actually challenges you mentally, right? So you think you're making a good decision, you make it, the immediate feedback is, nope, that was wrong. And the question is, how do you react? How do you react? And mentally tough individuals are those people who are able to control themselves in a moment, do the best with the abilities that they've got, and then ultimately react effectively to whatever feedback is going on. I say effectively, it doesn't mean super positive or super negative. We'll talk about a fairly controlled reaction, but it's the person who can control their mindset. So if you think that's mental toughness, the opposite of mental toughness is mental sensitivity. And what mentally sensitive people will do is they'll react. They'll react to situations. So take that same situation, a quarterback throws an interception, it gets returned for a touchdown. Okay. The mentally tough individual goes, that was a dumb move. I'll go and review some tape. I'll make sure I don't do it again. Yeah. But we've got the rest of the game to play. We can still win this. The mentally sensitive individual will look at that and go, oh my goodness, I'm useless. I'm terrible. This is the worst thing. The game is over. Forget it. And you'll know that people resign. They just give up from those moments, right? They just say, okay, well, I just can't do this anymore. And so toughness is the quality that we want to develop if we're going to be in high pressure situations where we want to do our best. And mentally tough individuals typically tend to rise through the ranks a little bit. They'll take on positions of leadership because those are the positions that require people to make big decisions that have pressure situations on them. But it's not about making the right decisions always. It's making the decision and then making it right afterwards by sticking to it and understanding the feedback. So I think we can all understand what mental toughness is in sport. How does mental toughness show up in the business world? Well, the more people I talk to about this, the more I hear that the world is crazy, right? And I've experienced it. If you look at my kind of history, I went on the biggest roller coaster journey of corporate space that has ever been. It's had movies made out of it. It's used now as case studies of how not to do things. And the emotional journey that we went on, everybody who was in that journey was exhausting, right? It was up. The biggest up, it's the biggest down, and it felt like we were riding a roller coaster every single day. So I know what that's like. And I've also been in situations where I've felt that I'm not empowered to do things. And I've had my thoughts challenged by other people in a way that has been mentally challenging. And I've really understood that and experienced that. And I've spoken to so many people who've been in that same situation where they're saying work is tough. And work is either tough because they've been hired to do something, but now they're expected to do something, or they don't philosophically agree with the direction, or they've been promoted into a role where they're just not feeling comfortable and capable, even though they're maybe the best person for the job. They don't believe it in themselves. And so there's so many of these situations now in the workplace where mental toughness is being challenged. And if you look at the stats, if you look at the statistics and the data related to satisfaction in the workplace, if you look at the Gallup poll in terms of employee satisfaction, it's around about 25%. I'll get the exact numbers for you, but around about 25% are actually happy with the work they do, right? They're in situations where they enjoy, they're happy, they're fulfilled, they're doing things that really challenge them, and they're bought into, okay? They're engaged, right? 25%, 1 in 4, okay? 1 in 4 people are engaged in their job. So that means 3 and 4 are not. Let's take 2 of those. 2 of those are in this kind of passive, resigned phase where they're just disengaged. Okay, they're disengaged. They're like, oh, well, it's not great, but it's not bad enough to want to change. And then in my book, Personal Transformation Blueprint, I call this a trap of average, right? So they've reached some level of success. Maybe they've got a dependency on the salary as it's coming in, so they don't want to rock the boat, but also they don't want to change because there's risk and there's gambling, and I'm not sure what's going to happen on the other side, and maybe they're not, a bit insecure about their own ability to go and make that transition. So it's about 50% of the world workforce, and then the other quarter, the other 25%, are actively disengaged. These are the people that you work with who turn up and you're like, oh, I don't really want to go into a meeting with these people because they're going to absolutely disrupt everything. They are negative about everything. They complain about everything that could possibly go wrong. It's like even before you finish the statement, they're going to come and say, that's rubbish, that's never going to work, and they're just going to poo-poo everything. And these people are called actively disengaged. So they're going to make it a point to raise their dissatisfaction, but they're not going to quit. They're not going to quit because whatever, things are not bad enough to really get out of that situation. So that seems like a crazy ratio to me, right? 1 in 4 people actually satisfied and engaged in their work, and 3/4 of the world not engaged. That's absolutely nuts. So mental toughness, I think, can play a part here. And we'll have a look now at the factors that go into mental toughness. And probably you'll understand now why, once we go through them, you'll understand why mental toughness is such an important trait to develop and investigate in yourself. So let's look at this. So mental toughness, there's 4 components, and each element of mental toughness, each of those 4 components has 2 factors. Okay, so the 4 components, 4 C's of mental toughness are control, commitment, confidence, and challenge. So control says, I am able to influence the situation as it is, right? I'm able to take control, and I have authority, or I have agency to act on this situation and make it different if I want to. Commitment is about, as you would imagine, got a target, I'm going to go and get there, right? Commitment to a process, to a goal, to an outcome. It's how focused are you on that outcome and how much are you prepared to do to get there. The next C is challenge. Okay, and challenge is that ability to step outside of your comfort zone. Many people don't like change, right? They don't like change because it's outside the comfort zone. It's outside of the norm. It's outside of the status quo. Mentally tough people are able to say, okay, well, there may be some risk involved, and you might have to change and do a few things differently to get there, but I'm prepared to make that change if it makes sense for the process. And then the last one then is confidence. How confident is the individual? And confidence comes from a couple of things. It comes from competent, being good at something, okay, and also understanding how to best interact with other people who are all trying to do the same thing, right? And how do you get them on your side? We have to know that we're good at something through developing ourselves or training or experience, but we also have to understand that when we're trying to do things, especially in business, that there are other people that we need to engage with that are going to help us get to our results. So those are the 4 C's of mental toughness. And as you start to think about those, you'll probably say, okay, well, I'm probably stronger in these areas and I'm not as strong in these areas. So you might have an idea about some of the development points if you wanted to develop your mental toughness that you could focus on. But let's dive in a little bit more detail and look at the 2 factors that go into each of them. So in control, there's 2 factors. There's life control, and then there's emotional control. Life control, emotional control. So life control is all about, do I have an internal locus of control? Can I control the results that go on around me? So people with high life control scores often have this belief that every action has a reaction, or for every behavior, there's a consequence. Okay, and they understand that, and they take responsibility. They have an internal locus of control for what goes on around them. So they'll say, okay, well, if I want this result, then I've got to do this, I've got to do that, and these things need to happen. They can map it out very easily. Somebody who's lower on this score would maybe externalize that factor. They may blame the circumstances, they may blame bad luck, they may blame the environment, or whatever's going on around them. There is a reason for them not getting what they want. Or even if they do get what they want, they may say, oh, I was just lucky this time. Or, oh, I guess we all kind of get there. Or, law of averages, those kind of things. They'll externalize the success. Externalize failure, they'll externalize success. So life control is about this internal locus of control. Like, where do we see ourselves as being able to control the outcome? The next one then is emotional control. And stress. Stress is a huge part of life now, regardless of whatever situation you play in. We look at this word, I think they call it VUCA. volatile, uncertain, all of those kind of craziness. It's just mad out there. Okay, it's mad. And if you were subject to a low score in emotional control from a mental toughness perspective, you would be all over the place. You'd be on this emotional roller coaster, and it would be, yes, everything's going great, and oh no, everything's terrible. And that, if you've ever been there, is just exhausting, right? It's absolutely exhausting. On the mental toughness side, high emotional control doesn't mean that we don't feel emotions. It's just that we don't allow ourselves to react in such a way. If something goes terribly, well, okay, it went bad. It happens. Yeah. We don't throw everything out the boat just because something didn't go our way. At the same time, if things go super well, we may celebrate for a bit, but we're like, okay, well, we've got a good one. Let's get back to work. Here we go. And so emotional control, high mental toughness score of emotional control means we're able to temper our emotions. We're able to stay in control and keep a calm appearance, even if underneath maybe the duck's feet are going a little bit faster. Okay, so that's control. Think about that: life control, emotional control. On the commitment side, there's two aspects. There's goal orientation and then achievement orientation. So goal orientation, as you would imagine, is related to how much do we set ourselves goals and how committed are we to get towards those goals. So a lot of people will start any journey by saying, okay, well, here's where I want to go, and have very clear vision on what they want to do. Business leaders will often have this. They'll say, okay, well, I've got an idea of where we want to go. We call them visionaries, right? Goal oriented is, this is what I want to do. This is where we want to get to. Let's go. And oftentimes people get behind these kind of leaders who have a vision, who have a direction they want to take people on. So that's goal orientation. On a low score for goal orientation, it's maybe a bit more reactive. They'll take whatever opportunities are there rather than taking control and setting their own objectives and tasks. Achievement orientation, on the other hand, is about how willing are you to see something through to completion. So goal orientation is great. I've set so many goals, and then something shiny has come up over there, and I'm like, I'm a little bit distracted. And I've completely lost focus and lost orientation on actually getting to the achievement. So we need people who have achievement orientation, not just so that we see everything through just because we have to, but who understand that setting a goal is great, but completion and achievement is also important. So commitment, achievement orientation, and goal orientation. Challenge then is about stepping outside of the status quo. Okay, so being prepared to push the boundaries and test the limits of what we're capable of. And there's probably two aspects to that as well, right? As the mental toughness model would suggest. So the first one is risk orientation. Second one is learning orientation. Risk orientation, how prepared are you to take a risk? Not doing something crazy or leaping without looking, that kind of thing, but a calculated risk. Would you change something, for example, that was working well for the opportunity for it to work better? Would you do something differently in an organization, even though things have been done a particular way for a very long time, if you were to put your neck on the line for the product? Now, here's the thing, right? A lot of people, if they're not as open to risk and challenge, will say, no way, I'm going to play it safe. I'm going to keep status quo. I'm going to reinforce everything that's going on. And that would be seen as a low mental toughness score. High mental toughness says is, I'm prepared to take risks, calculated risks, because I understand what the opportunity is, and I weigh that up against the status quo, and I make a sensible decision about that, but I'm not scared to challenge things and do things differently. Learning orientation says, okay, well, if we're going to go on a journey, then things are going to go wrong. Things are going to go wrong. And the question is, when things go wrong, what can we learn? What can we learn? Do we look at something as a failure and just write it off and say, oh, everything is terrible, which would be a low learning orientation? Or do we say, okay, well, great. We've made some progress. We didn't get as far as we wanted to do. How can we do things differently, better, improve next time? Or what can we take from this situation that's going to allow us to then next time step up, get a little bit closer, or do things a little bit better? People with high mental toughness will go into challenging situations for the opportunity to grow, okay, for the opportunity to grow as part of the success journey as well. So that's challenge. Lastly, then, is confidence. And confidence has two aspects. It's confidence in abilities, our own self, and then interpersonal confidence. So if we look at confidence and abilities first, this is myself. How good am I in a situation? Now, there's two ways you could score this on the high side. So just be aware of this. You could have high abilities. Okay, you could be very good at what you do, and so you would give yourself a high score. Or you could be very confident and maybe overly confident and overrate your own abilities. So just be aware that there are people out there that have have a high level of confidence that can't necessarily back it up. Just be aware of those individuals. But if you score high on mental toughness in this area, the idea is that you're skilled, you're talented, you're able to do things, and you're confident in that ability. A lot of people have abilities, but they're not confident, right? And they won't put themselves forward for challenges or opportunities or all those kind of things. So high confidence in ability and the ability to really take on challenges associated to those abilities. And then the other one is interpersonal confidence. How open are you to your ability to influence others to get an outcome and to get a job done? If you think about business now is about teams. How can you influence teams to do things, even if you don't have authority, right? This is what a lot of situations happen in the business world is they'll put together project teams and there'll be a leader. That leader may not have any more authority than anybody else on the team, but they need to be the one that drives the project, okay? And it's about getting people engaged, understanding the motivations, communicating, project leading, all of those kind of things goes into interpersonal confidence and your ability to bring people on the journey. So if you take all of those 8 components, control, commitment, challenge, confidence, and that's control with life control, emotional control, commitment with goal orientation and achievement orientation, challenge with risk orientation and learning orientation, and confidence with confidence in abilities and interpersonal confidence. If you combine all of those factors, that will give you a mental toughness score. And we want to be tougher. We need to be tougher. We need to not be as sensitive in many situations. Not because sensitive is bad. In many cases, it's actually good to be able to understand other people. But from a mental toughness perspective, we don't want to be all over the place emotionally because that's exhausting and doesn't put us at our most effective. Mental tough individuals will say, okay, well, I've got consistency. I'm able to control everything. I'm able to do my best. This is the level that we're going to play at. And they will stay consistent at that level. And if you look all the way back to the fundamentals of mental toughness, the question was, how can you take an athlete and have them perform closest to their best at all times? That was the challenge from a mental toughness perspective. And so this is the challenge to you from a mental toughness perspective at work is how can you be at your best the majority of the time? Well, if you develop these talents and these skills and these traits, you'll get a higher mental toughness score and you'll be able to perform better all the time. So that was a good introduction to mental toughness. If you're interested in finding out more, drop me a message. And if you're interested in finding out your mental toughness score as well, we can do that on the website as well. So develop your mental toughness today, build some strength in all of those 4 areas. I'll see you on the next episode.